alive, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bonnet. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. So, as you guys see, we're going to talk a bit about the release of Bill Cosby today. Is everybody excited about this or what? That's like interesting, right? So, these charges have been dismissed, thrown out, all that. And so now Bill Cosby goes home. He's gone home. He's rested. He's chilling. Paparazzi outside of his door right now, on his front lawn right now, all that good stuff. So, how you guys feeling about that? Also, I kind of want to talk about some of the popular stories that are going on right now. Man, it's crazy. Let's just take this one in for a second. So Bill Cosby is like the absolute poster boy for the outcome of the Me Too movement. And so this is a lot. This means a lot of things. So I just want to go ahead and take a pause. Welcome you guys to the show. Hello. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson, where we talk about accountability and issues that affect the Black community, and not only the Black community, but also American community and the culture in and of itself. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. This is going to be a very interesting show today. I don't know how many of you have really hard feelings, harsh feelings, or indifferent feelings about this and other things that this might look like it's going to impact, but it's definitely a lot here to have a discussion about. How many of you have heard about why the charges were vacated? If you've heard about why these charges were vacated and why this case was thrown out of court, I want you to type a 1 in the chat. If you don't know yet, type a 2 in the chat. If you know, tell me what you think you know. Tell me what you know. So let's have this discussion, because it's something, right? If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and like and share this content. I would love for this to be a collaborative discussion amongst people that are at the end of their day, end of their work day, getting off from work, and now we have to sit with this news. But before we get to the very important conversation of what this means, not only for the Black community, but what it means for American population that that kind of grew up watching the Cosby Show, and also people who had their kids watching the Cosby Show. Before we get into that discussion, I kind of want to talk about some of the popular things that are happening right now here in Atlanta. So if you guys are viewing me from Atlanta, I want you guys to type a 1 in the chat now. Say hi. Don't be a stranger. Don't be weird out there. But there's a lot today, right? So high-speed chase ends in teenagers being looked for and things like that. And now we have a police officer who was shot off Peachtree Street. Still kind of closed down over there. How do you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel about the amount of aggression towards police officers? That's a whole nother question, right? So we've talked a bit about T.I. and Tiny. We've talked a bit about the Me Too movement. We've talked a bit about things that were spiraled as a result of Bill Cosby being arrested and prosecuted for the rapes of several women, right? We've talked about that a bit. And I think you guys see that R. Kelly went down shortly after him. So a lot of people had a lot of things to say about R. Kelly. And when I first started having this conversation, there were a lot of things said. A lot of people felt a kind of way. I don't know if you guys still have that same energy right now, but I definitely am here to have a conversation about it. So tell me guys, how you guys are feeling. Like let me survey how you're feeling out there. I want to know what your thoughts are, your reflections at this point. Are you guys upset that Bill Cosby was released, or, I know I put how you guys feel about D L Hughley, because that's a lot. That's a lot. Most people who supported Bill from the very beginning of this thing, and even some people who didn't, have targeted D L Hughley. It's like the guy who is the traitor of the Black community. He said some pretty racy things so far. A lot of people are pretty upset with this guy, pretty upset with how he feels about Bill, about a lot of people. If you guys have not really been watching, D L Hughley has been saying some things. He's been ruffling some feathers here for a minute now. And for him, he's grown quite comfortable in, expressing himself and expressing where he sits, where his position is on all of this. So I think that we have to get pretty comfortable and understand that this is a guy who's going to say exactly how he feels about things. And he's not going to be stopped by people bullying him or feeling a certain way. But I do think that there are some things that he said and some things that he's done that made him lose a large amount of his following, right? And of course, some people are going to follow him more because of the things that he's saying, right? So when you lose one particular audience, you gain another. So how are you guys feeling? Do you feel like, regardless of what happened with Bill Cosby being released and everything, considering everything that was heard over the case of, these women coming out and speaking and doing all of these interviews and trials and things like that. So over all of this, with all the information that you've heard so far, does the overturn of the conviction make you feel like somebody was lying? The somebody being the victims. Do you guys have less support for victims who claim to be sexually assaulted? I know a lot of people are talking about Felicia Rashad and how she feels about this. And, they're like, well, she played his on-screen wife for all this time, and she's a prominent and respected Black woman. I know she can't support him, but I got to let you guys know, Felicia Rashad has stood by him from day one. And even though there have been things that Bill has done that, she definitely did not agree with, as far as like his interactions and things like that with people, she stood by him and she still got the same energy to this day. So the only thing is that his wife didn't. So that says a lot, for a lot of people who have been watching, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I feel like, he must have done it. This must have been, have been his thing. He definitely raped these women, because a wife who really believes her husband is innocent wouldn't negate her responsibility to stand beside him and things like that, because they do come from that time where in the Black community, marriage was everything. And to have a marriage meant that you also had responsibility. And that responsibility sometimes means that you have to stand beside your husband in times where he makes bad decisions. I feel like He's definitely made some very boy. There are no words for the decisions that he's made. But those are his decisions, those are his burdens, and I think that he has to sit with them. Okay. So he was originally sent to prison for a 10-year sentence, right? After being found guilty of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea, what's her name? Constant, whatever. And this happened at his home, allegedly, right? Now, a couple of years later, this guy's walking home, walking out of here, getting in the car, going home, walking in his home, and his victims are now being potentially sued. That's the word. That's the word. I mean, defamation of character is a real thing. I fully stand beside people who are survivors of sexually assault and their complaints and their right to make their complaints heard, and lodging those complaints to the authorities. But I do feel like there are an abundance of people who cry wolf, right? And as a result of that, it makes it very, very difficult to be able to disseminate between cases that are viable and cases that are not. And as a result, it ends up splitting up families. It ends up causing discord amongst friends, people, and their connections. Here's the reality of this. Someone asked me if I felt like Bill Cosby was innocent. Okay. The truth is, I don't feel like he's innocent. I don't feel like he didn't drug these women. I don't. So maybe one or two that know each other coming forward with the same story, you might have me kind of guessing whether or not somebody lying on you. But when you have an abundance of women, you got dozens of women saying the same thing or speaking toward the same tune or level of discomfort when they're around you in these particular settings where your wife isn't around and things like that. This is life, people. I tell people all the time when I do the accountability conversations around sexual misconduct in general, when I talk to you guys about the importance of understanding what rape really is, right? And what consent really is, those things that make these situations so very difficult. When I talk to people about that, I'm talking in present tense, okay? And I feel the same way about the R. Kelly scenarios as well. I feel like oftentimes men have gotten this idea that because they are men, because they are curators of the world that we live in, as a primary source of strength, right? I feel like sometimes they get the misconception and they misstep as a result and think that they can do and feel and say and express whatever they want, whenever they want, regardless of what someone else feels or, needs or is inviting them to do. So as a result of that, that leads to sexual assault. It does. Also, it leads to a lot of things. Now, while you are able to live free, live in your truth, and walk this walk the way you see fit, you are not privy to go out here taking cochadas as you see fit. A woman's vagina is her vagina, and you got to let it be. If she doesn't want to give it to you while she is of sound mind, body, and spirit, then you have to have enough respect, not only for her, but also for yourself, to accept her discontent, right? Or her disinterest in you, and keep it moving. And it's really that simple. It really is. But for some reason, men make it pretty difficult. You know, I think sometimes I did this video, what was it, like 2 years ago, in collaboration with a ton of other women. And it was meant to bring light to a better understanding of the Me Too movement and why so many women feel compelled now to say the things that they didn't feel compelled previously to say. And it was meant to also educate, give men more education, more insight into the things, the behaviors, and the perceptions that they should be adopting in order for them to better understand engaging in a safe way for them with women, and with men if they're homosexual. But the idea is, just because a person wears a particular type of perfume, a particular type of clothing, a particular costume or something, doesn't mean that's an invitation for you to overstep and come into her personal space and do what you want with her. And so that's sometimes very difficult for men to gauge. It is, because they will misread every time, especially in a world like we're talking about we're in right now. We talked about, and I played for you guys this video with, what's her name, Blue Sapphire. I don't know, I can't remember, but she's some kind of a girl who does sugar baby kind of stuff. But in playing her video, with her interview with Kevin Samuels, and also her interview with these other guys on this other show, I feel like, if nothing else, you guys should have realized that there is something that women do that makes men feel entitled to their vagina. Okay? Because there is something in the back of a man's mind that says that a woman brings her vagina to the table. And considering the fact that this young lady was up there on this platform having conversations with these young men, and her response to, well, you know, technically, I feel like you're selling your pussy. That's what the guy said, right? And she was like, well, you know, I try to teach women that she got to hold back, because at the end of the day, once she gives that, then she doesn't have anything else to give. She doesn't have any wiggle room. So I feel like women, if you have that mindset, you have to be accountable for the perceptions and your reality, right? So the walk that you walk, you have to be mindful about that piece and how it affects the environments you're in, the situations and experiences that you as a result are exposed to. And so that doesn't mean that you're responsible for your own rape, but you do have to be accountable for whether or not you're in particular situations that may lead to those types of things, or even situations that may lead to people misquoting, mistaking you. And so when we talk about Bill Cosby, I want you guys to understand, Bill Cosby is the first. However, R. Kelly did not drug a bunch of women, and I keep talking to you guys about it. I keep saying the same thing over and over, but please understand that when you are trying to prosecute someone in modern day current society issues, right, for previous day, pre-modern day activities, right, you just can't mix the two. You can't. Let's go back. Let's look at some comments really quickly. It says, I'm happy Bill Cosby free now. We need R. Kelly free next. Well, I don't know about need. I think R. Kelly's case is a clear, open and shut. He's going to walk. Like, that's, R. Kelly is definitely, I feel like, a victim of circumstance and society, and pop culture. It's just so many layers there. So says I sip joy, but when drugs and alcohol are allowed, they really blurred. I learned that in college, but thank God I was wise enough to back off because the same girl ended up doing it. Exactly. 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 And that's what I'm saying. Like, you got to understand, like, a no, a no isn't a requirement for it to be rape. The absence of a yes is the requirement. You understand? So if a woman doesn't tell you, yes, baby, I want you now, right? And if she's not constantly engaged and she doesn't continue to want you, it still can be rape. You can have sex, you can be in the middle of sex, and then she says, you know what, stop. And you keep going, like, okay, I just got a couple of minutes. I just need a couple of seconds. As soon as you do that, you've opened yourself up to all type of chaos. I think that men have to protect themselves because these situations are so, you can get in them so easily. You understand? And there is, getting out of them is much more difficult. The thing with Bill Cosby's sentence is this: his sentence was overturned due to a technicality. He was not guilty. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I put that out there. R. Kelly's scenario is a little bit different. But Bill Cosby, with these drug situations and everything, you got too many women with the same story, Bill. You did it. Your wife knew you did it. And you understand, it is what it is. But I do wish him well. I'm happy that in his age and where he is right now, he's able to be a place that's more comfortable and things like that. Considering all things, I think he does deserve to be at home. And considering how this thing got stacked up against him, I feel really bad, about that part, as far as like the justice that was rendered, right? Because it's so many different layers, right? However, I do feel like those women should have prosecuted him when these things happened. And I really don't like vindictive justice. That doesn't work for me. I'm a person about pragmatics, and when I'm holding people accountable, I need you to be accountable because now is the time to be accountable, not later. So you say R. Kelly will walk when they start calling witness because stories will change. Well, not even because of that. There are several things that's going to cause R. Kelly to walk. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't want to speak too much on that because I know his trial is in the making, and I want to make sure that I don't give anybody any juice to go up against him and do anything differently than what they intend to. But what I will say is this: R. Kelly is the victim in this particular situation. Our society is not necessarily geared up in the 90s, okay, for a person like R. Kelly to go to jail for these charges, which is why he was found not guilty previously. You cannot now, in another type of society where the culture has shifted completely, go back and decide that, okay, you know what? Let's see if we can shift this energy a little bit. Let's see if we can charge him in a different way. Let's see if we can get it to go back to court again. That's just not fair. To me, that is as skewed as double jeopardy. You know what I mean? I feel like we've got to draw a line, a hard line, when it comes to injustices for crimes being prosecuted appropriately. If the prosecutor can't get their stuff together the first time, then stop giving them a second and a third time with the technicality attached. So I'm hoping that Bill Cosby remains free and outside of the influence of people who have been in his circle that enable those particular situations. I hope that R. Kelly can kind of, what do they say? Stay down. Good God. But I really hope he's getting the help that he needs while he's in there. Because here is the other thing. The other piece to that is I feel like he has a tremendous amount of trauma in his history. And I feel like sometimes people will not get the help that they need unless they're in situations that are very compromising. So those situations go to include being incarcerated, right? Where somebody else is in charge of your health care, somebody else is in charge of your mental health care, somebody else is in charge of you getting up and going to sleep, you know, managing yourself, making sure you don't put substances in your body, or so they're supposed to be. But those types of things. But I feel like there is a lot of trauma there, and he definitely needs some help, and I hope that he gets the help that he needs. Likewise with Bill Cosby, I feel like there is a tremendous amount of trauma there, not only for him, but for his system. That's my primary concern. But I think that he still has to be held accountable for his missteps, his misdeeds, and those types of things in regard to his marriage and his family situation. Because you are a father to many people that you've taken under your wing, and you've mentored and you coached and you taught, and Bill Cosby for so long was like America's father. And not only America's father, like people outside of America, like in Finland, people adored the guy. Africa, they knew about the guy. Like, it's just, when you have prominence on a television and then it's removed, and then after it's removed, now we're in a place where our mindsets say this guy who was prominent, who was in this role, is actually a rapist, right? It does a lot for the culture of our community. And it also does a lot when it comes to the accountability component, because we already come from that whole mindset where it's like we just have to protect Black men at all costs, right? Regardless of who they rape or not, or if we know or not. But in this particular case, I'm not saying that Bill Cosby, you know, should go free because he didn't rape anybody. What I'm saying is he should go free because justice was never rendered properly, and he had a very unfair trial due to the ulterior motives of the people who testified. Just going to keep it at that. So let me go to the comments really quickly. Hold on, let me look at this one. I agree with you, but what are your thoughts on the R. Kelly and Aaliyah situation? What do you mean my thoughts on it? I think I already talked about, oh, you may have not been on. So Aaliyah's parents consented to her being with him. Okay. So, and that was a whole thing back then. Okay. A lot of people were like scratching their heads like, whoa, what's going on here? What we doing? Oh, okay. They're in love. All right. Well, I mean, she's out here dressing pretty provocative. You know what I mean? Belly's out. Yeah, we can see everything she got going on. So I guess so. She's a whole adult out here adulting. I guess my thing is that was a different society. I was not against it then. I can't say that I'm against it now. I'm just going to be honest, because it was just a whole different society. When we look at a kid that age now, then I would be, you know, eyebrows would be raising. I wouldn't have the same energy. So for Aaliyah and her level of maturation then, and his level of maturation then, and where they were in their careers and their lives together, it is what it is. I wasn't against it then. I can't be against it now. However, if I were to take the same scenario with kids with a young girl that age now. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. There are a lot of 18-year-old girls who turn 18 and they're still not ready for this world that's in front of them. The maturation level of a 14-year-old is very different now than it was then. And so that's what I'll say about that. No. In the very beginning of this show. So I don't know. You may have come on after I finished talking about that one. But yeah, I definitely feel like he's next in line to be released. But I also feel like his case is one of those open shut. You cannot prosecute someone for a current crime. It's just like when a new crime bill comes out, right? I think that's what you got to think about it like. But when a new crime bill comes out, are you going to go back and now bring up people on charges that did these things back 20 years ago? Yeah, no, you're not going to do that. So the same thing happens when we look at societal laws and societal norms. Societal norms are the ones that have shifted. And even now, they're still thinking about, I don't know if you guys know or not, but they're thinking about pushing the age of consent back to 25. From 18 to 25, huge jump, right? I feel like the further they push the age back, the less prepared kids are, because the parents start to feel like they're less required to give them life skills. Kids during Aaliyah's, teens were more like latchkey kids, okay? And for the most part, they were pretty much independent. It was a thing for all kids to be working jobs and going to school during every year of their high school year and driving to school, being very independent. Now kids those ages simply do not do those things because they either are helicopter parented, because those parents are now the parents and parents of those same kids, right? So now those kids have grown up and become parents themselves, and they know what they were into. They know they used to skip school. They know they used to do all these extra things, smoke weed, get high, snort a couple of lines of coke. These are things that they were doing. And so as a result, they now want a helicopter parent, and they never allow the kid to get any freedom whatsoever that's developmentally appropriate. And as a result, because you go so far left trying to avoid the right, these kids become ill prepared to go out into the world that you're pushing them out into. And so, it is what it is. It is what it is. But, I definitely feel like R. Kelly's going to be next to be released, however, for different reasons. Bill Cosby, on the other hand, I feel like, dude, you're super, super guilty. Super guilty. Stop drugging people. T.I. and Tiny, same situation. What is it with, I'm very curious, and T.I. still hasn't reached out to give me any answers. Tamika hasn't reached out to give me any answers. Let me tell you something, Clifford, Tamika, if nobody sat you down before now and had that conversation, which I know you had that conversation before, but I'm going to say it right here on live television, sort of, right? If you need drugs, alcohol, substances of any kind to get engaged with sex, you probably shouldn't be engaged with sex. You have to take your time. Bill Cosby should have taught you something. And guess what? You kind of did this after Bill was all, jacked up, hung out to dry. You didn't care. You guys feel like you're ruthless out here. What's going on, Lawrence? How are you? And I feel like as a result, people are paying for that. The people out here in the society who support T.I. and Tiny, people support that hustle guy mentality. And you guys think that he's one thing because he says he's out here helping people in the community and all that good stuff. That's supposed to be something. But the reality is Clifford has a history. And he not only does he have a history, but he also doesn't believe he has an issue or a problem. When a man will put a gun to a woman's head, and please, anybody who is listening, I want you guys to hear me on this, because this is about men's accountability today, and also for your protection. Here's the thing: if you find that you're the type of man that will put a gun to a woman's head and cock it, you might need some help. You might need some help. You might need to just sit down with someone in mental health or general health or whatever, so they can connect you to the right resources. But you might need to get yourself together so that you can operate in a better way for those people who are always watching you. Because the thing about men is, hey, what's going on? The thing about men is that right now we're in a society where men are targeted more so than anything. Okay. And then you have negative representation of men out there that are being pinged for the voice of men, like Kevin Samuels. What's that other guy? Tommy Sotomayor is only for the broken. But who else? Derek Jackson. Good God. Derek Jackson and Bill Cosby need to sit down and have a conversation. That'd be interesting. They're literally in the same boat. but no. I feel like you got to be careful when you're men. And you have to make sure that you understand when you need to get yourself back together, so that the world that's watching you and constantly judging you, so they can see the real you. That's the reality. Because every man is not one man's mistake. However, every man generally has an overall consensus that sex is just sex and consent is possible. Consent is probable as long as the woman's not screaming no or running away, you're not violent, those kinds of things. And that's just not the case. He says, my focus is in the legal process. I'm detaching from the offenses charge. The process was so messed up in the Cosby case. I agree. That's what I talked about. But I also think that there is definitely an accountability component with him taking accountability for the things that he did do, his missteps, misdeeds, and that kind of stuff. But I also feel like we have to say that women, because here's the bigger issue. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys the bigger issue just with the Cosby situation. If we go without holding these women accountable, okay, as a society of people, if these women avoid prosecution, right? It says that we as a society have a personal agenda against men. That's what it says. So none of our men are safe, regardless of race, color, creed, any of that. None of our men are safe. You understand what I'm saying? And I understand that some men do some things that are questionable and some that are without question outright wrong. But our judicial system has to hold these young women accountable, because when you have malicious intent and you have an ulterior motive for you to testify against someone, whether they've committed an act against you or somebody you know, the reality is you cannot be an objective witness then. You understand what I'm saying? Because you got something else that's motivating what you're doing. So my first thing is that it took so long for you to come forward in the first beginning, right? So we have to ask that question. Why did it take so long for you to make a complaint? Why did it take so long for you to come forward? Why are you so comfortable if all things are still the same? The legal process is still the same. The people process is still the same. What made you feel so comfortable with coming forth now? Society is the same set of folks. They're still alive right now, living, kicking, moving, breathing. All of those components are the same when you had the choice to come forward but chose not to, right? So why now, right? If you are telling me then that you're motivated to come forward because someone has promised you this, that, the third, all of that, then you just can't know. I can't entertain that. I understand what happened to you. Let's see if he's willing to settle out of court, pay you for your therapy and things that you need to get yourself together and heal. But to sentence a man when you know that people have, some other intentions, that's just a no. You say the sanctity of a sealed legal agreement must prevail. Yeah. On what grounds can we prosecute them? We would need evidence. If we have evidence, then yes. There is evidence. Just like the same evidence that got this case overturned is all that's needed. Because it raises a reasonable doubt about whether or not they perjured themselves. When they take that oath, I want you guys to go back and look at the oath and then really reflect on what words they're attesting to when they say that they're going to tell the truth, so help them God, right? You cannot tell your truth if your truth is pressured. That's the same as rendering when the police come in and they pressure you to sign a confession. It's illegal for a reason. So it's also equally illegal for you to testify and render testimony where you're receiving something in exchange for something as a result of the testimony. I don't know how many of you were there for that review that I did on what's his name case. The guy who was prosecuted and sent to jail for killing Michael Jordan's dad, even though he didn't do it. So just in case you guys missed that, I'm gonna need you to go back and watch it, because there are several things wrong with that particular situation. And there are several things that are going to get this guy's conviction overturned as a result of those things wrong, because it's proven that they had to go back to court and fix this other guy's plea deal as a result of him actually being used in the testimony and doing less time as a result of his testimony against the guy. But at the time, they had to make sure his plea deal didn't look that way. Do you understand? So after the conviction, they went back to court and they fixed it, admitted to the mistakes in it, and they fixed his sentencing to run it concurrently, but take off some time. Because if he had testified at that time, he would have been testifying as a result of him getting something favorable from the courts in exchange of his testimony. You says an overturned conviction isn't enough. So not the overturning of the conviction. It's the why the conviction was overturned. Says, then the white prosecutors must agree to prosecute the white women. Not going to happen. It's not about white or black, especially in this case. Just wait for it. So I think that the one thing is that I already told you guys this was going to happen when I did my show, like, what was that, a year ago, 2 years ago, when this conviction happened. Like, there are a lot of things that are like plain in plain sight. They're just right there. You got to sometimes let things unfold. The processes will always unfold. And just like I'm telling you right now, this guy is going to be overturned too. So you cannot use a witness that can't be objectable. You have to be an objective person. You can't be subjective. You can't be testifying because this benefits you in this way. It's going to lead to a new trial or the conviction being overturned altogether. But so, it is what it is. So right now, I feel like we're just waiting on R. Kelly and his situation to unfold. So how are you guys feeling about that? I know somebody asked about it before we really got to it, but how are y'all feeling about that? I know you guys asked about Aaliyah and R. Kelly's relationship and what that looks like. Also, the Me Too movement, I talked about that. And this, I think, directly affects the Me Too movement. We don't prosecute these women if we don't say, hey, you know what, this is not allowed, this is disallowed. It compromises the integrity of women who have actually been sexually assaulted and have grounds to bring up charges other than, you know, receiving something in exchange for their testimony against the person that did it to them. Like, I'm not saying that Bill didn't do this, because I'm pretty sure that he did it. Pretty sure that he did it. What I'm saying is the prosecutor misstepped. Knowing the information that the prosecutor knew and allowing all of these women to render testimony when he knew that some of them were potentially compromised. So in the legal process, you have to think about, it's not about, like you said, it's not about the things that you assume or even the things you know happen. It's really about what you can prove. So you say Bill was never supposed to have been, is it meant to be, have been charged according to the first deal he made, but the following prosecutor went ahead and charged him which violated his previous arrangement, which led to the technical difficulty. Yeah, but see, that's the thing. If we get greedy because we know we got a good solid person that's going to lead to a conviction, that's what happens. So I think that prosecutors have to get a greater level of understanding of how to gauge situations and what win is a win and what win is an impossible win. Because it's not a win unless you know that you can keep it, make it stick, as they say. So that's just kind of where I am on that. I feel like if we don't do something here, we compromise the integrity of the Me Too movement and people who have actually been assaulted, that are doing their prosecutorial process for a reason other than, you know, getting something in exchange for that. Because I want you guys to kind of look at what has been rendered, you know, what things were promised and what things have unfolded as a result. Like, these women, they're something. You have to be careful when you're choosing people to be represented in a class action or a bulk lawsuit like this. So since I hope R. Kelly can beat them charges, the feds, it's a different ball game. Yeah, no, not really. I think R. Kelly's alleged victims have spoken out enough on TV shows for people to see, if he has a good attorney, for people to see what the motivations were of his victims, you know. So how do you feel about the sentencing? So why I'm going to say this first. So a judge has no real control over who comes in, what cases come towards his courtroom. Now he does have a little bit of flexibility when it comes to recusing himself. But that's still very little flexibility. He has to have a personally vested interest, has to know the person, not be able to be objective, that kind of thing. But if the African Americans, if the Black Americans never came to his courtroom in the first beginning, if these cases were not being prosecuted in the first beginning, so that means if those crimes were not committed in the first beginning, then he would not have a terrible record. So sometimes we're looking at things because we only want to know how a person has ruled on these cases versus other cases. But I think that if you look at the cases of similar nature where he's been presented with white people and the same or similar evidence, then you'll see there's pretty much synchrony across the board. When judgments are rendered, that the process is due for a reason. Justice is served for a reason, because when we're looking at things that are misaligned, it's real easy for a judge to be unseated, because they don't have to be voted into those positions at his level. It's more like tenured positions. And so I think that we have to understand what that process looks like. So let's continue to have this conversation. Let me know how you guys feel about the Me Too movement and how it's going to be impacted as a result of this Bill Cosby's case being overturned. Tell me how you guys feel about Felicia Rashad and her continuing to support him throughout all of this. That's an interesting one. Yeah. So, and tell me how you guys feel about his wife and his death at this point, considering all things. That's a point for me. That's one that I'm kind of looking at, and I'm like, let's see how this unfolds. Family has one of the widest disparity degrees in the U.S. I've been in the court since 1980s. He's among the worst. Okay. Maybe I'll look further into it. So far, from the records that I see from the federal level, he's pretty squeaky clean. So, but I don't know. Maybe I'll take another look. Are there particular cases that you're looking at? But so, yeah, let me know how you guys are feeling. And I guess we'll see. Of course, because the feds typically don't try cases they don't feel like they can win. However, there are a lot of things that happens in society that flips that win possibility. A lot of things like this. Yep. A lot of things like this. This is it. So, yeah. That's all I got, you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time and sit through this with me. For those of you who live in the Atlanta area, don't forget to check out the footage and follow the story about the officer that was shot in that apartment complex on Peachtree. It's just crazy. The world is just getting crazy, and the crime here is ridiculous. It just is. Definitely send me an email. So, and the email is doclqj@gmail.com. So, yeah, that's all I got, you guys. Thank you so much for sitting through with me. If you've not already subscribed, liked, shared, go ahead and do that now. Let's have a comprehensive conversation about this as far as accountability. Who do you think in this particular case, with Bill Cosby's case being overturned and everything, who do you think needs to be held accountable? Not many of you weighed in also on how you feel about D L Hughley and some of the things that he said publicly. So I'm going to give you guys some time to go recalibrate and see what this guy talks about, some of the things that he says quite frequently, what he has said in relation to how he feels about Bill Cosby and his conviction initially. I'd love to hear about your thoughts around Felicia Rashad. That's definitely a point of contention for me. But D L Hughley is somebody, is something, and people are saying some things now. So let's just see what happens, right? Continue to have the conversation. That is all that I have. And go out there and make good choices, be great, and contribute to society in a positive way. Later days.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bonnet. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.